a very primitive, rich, and complex concept. We can think about time in several ways. We can relate time to the movement. We can relate time to life, to aging, to biology. We can relate time to our consciousness, to the duration of our thoughts, our feelings, and the time of related to the environment. We can relate time to the movement of the stars and clocks and calendars. So time is a very important concept to history, philosophy, art, science. In physics, time is very important. It has been much explored and studied in this area. And there are a lot of interpretations about time inside of physics. But as I have identified, there is a lack of reflection about this concept. People in the school used to just do math calculations and don't reflect about this concept, about all these senses and natures about time. And it's a pity because time is a very fascinating concept. My students, for example, loves talking about time, about some aspects about time, and it's a very important concept inside of physics. So I think it's important to pay attention at this concept inside of the graduation course because my research question is how the pre-service physics teachers understand time concept. My research area is science education, so I'm interested in these people, pre-service teachers, because they are going to be teachers in the future. They have to explain time and create activities related to this concept. So I think it's important to pay attention at this concept inside of physics graduation course. I'm going to show you my working steps. I'm doing a historical research about senses of time related to physics graduation course with examples of human activities. To do this, I'm studying and analyzing the program of graduation course. I wanted to know how time concept is treated, what kind of activities time is present on the graduation course. To support my research, I'm using cultural historical activity theory, the ideas of Vygotsky, and the model of conceptual profile. I will explain this model soon. My objective is investigate the conceptions of time presented by pre-service physics teachers through interviews in order to elaborate a proposal for conceptual profile for my samples. I elaborate a research instrument, and now I'm interviewing these pre-service teachers. In this presentation, I will talk about theoretical issues and about my research too. So, theoretical issues. We consider that subject and object are a dialectical binomial. So, subject exists together with object. We can think subject is a man and object is time concept, for example. So a man, since he was a child, he learns how to measure time, and then he related time to the movement of the sun, and then he investigates its properties, then he attributes value to time, like time to save a life. Then he goes to physics university and he learns about time dilation in relativity theory. So all this knowledge transforms this person. And reciprocally and dialectically, the reality of time is transformed. The reality of time becoming qualitatively different, more complex. That's why subject and object are a binomial, dialectical binomial, and this thing moves inside of human activities. I'm going to show you an example about my historical research about senses of time. I'm using Norbert Elias, he's a sociologist, and he wrote an interesting book about time. According to this sociologist, societies without calendars, for these societies, temporal references were based on biological processes, like hunger, sleep, thirst, cold, and these processes are related to natural phenomena, like tide, drought, rain. There is no notion of irreversibility of time. Human consciousness was more affected by the repetition of the same sequence, like light and dark, hot and cold. The appearance and essence of time is cyclical, non-continuous, and qualitative, because there is no measure. So we think there is a closed connection with activity and the perception, the appearance of time concept. For these communities, these measured activities are hunting, agriculture. So these activities, these chains of activities, are related to the meaning of time and are related to consciousness of these people. So activities are going to influence the way these people are in the world and together with the world. But later, with the need of trading and urbanization, there is a urge need to synchronize the human activities and trading. So time is measured, and time is understood as uniform, continuous, linear. So I will read this quickly. Through watches, it's a kind of message that a human group addresses to each of individual's members. The symbols on the display give me information on various aspects of cosmic. For example, the position of sun and earth in succession of his movements. Day watches inform me if it's day or night, morning or afternoon. The time has, therefore, a symbolic representation of a vast network of relationships. When I read this vast network of relationships, for me it is activities chain. We can realize that a calendar is a map of time activities. A clock and a calendar is maps of human activities. A calendar is a high-level synthesis of time. It's carrying many of human relations. In this sequence of chains, activities gives life to time concept. We can think, for example, now is 4 o'clock at 30th year, the 30th day of the 7th month of a year 2016. So time is a number. If you are limited in this interpretation, you can't see the human relations or the relation, the time related to astronomical bodies and other things. Now I'm going to explain the model of conceptual profile. This model expresses different interpretations of a concept. It is a model to express different interpretations. We consider that different modes of thinking concepts coexist in the same individual, even after this formal education. I'm using a perspective a complex conceptual profile. This perspective can be found in this book, which was published recently. According to this model, concept is not a static definition. Concept is complex, is in movement, and live in human activities, and has many facets. These facets we call in this model zone. Each facet of a concept is called zone. Each zone has 3 dimensions, at least 3 dimensions: ontological, epistemological, and axiological. So, the ontological dimension refers to nature of object, nature of time. For example, what is time? Time is a number, time is a geometry. Epistemological dimension refers to how a person knows an object, or know time. For example, we know time because of the knowledge of the numbers, or we know time because classical physics or relativity theory. And axiological dimension refers to values and goals assigned to time. For example, time is money. So, I will propose a conceptual profile to physics teachers in training. I'm interested in teaching and learning activities, but I think it's not enough that these teachers only know different interpretations about time, only know different zones about time. I think it's important that these teachers should be able to establish relation among their zones, understand different contexts of use, realize differences between its aspects, and expand notion of time to their students. This idea I will use learning orders by Rodrigues and Matos. Okay, now I will talk about my methodology. My initial hypothesis is the most accessible zone by pre-service physics teachers will be related to mechanical time, a clock time, a time like a number. My sample, I'm interviewing students of all years of the graduation course. Until now, I interviewed 16 students. But some senses and meanings of time seems natural, trivial, seems that don't need to be questioned. And I'm interviewing these people at the University of São Paulo, in the Institute of Physics. So I think this place would define a physical context to my questions. To amplify my answers and to overcome this problem, I'm using the dimensions of a complex conceptual profile and genetic scales from Vygotsky. I'm using this to elaborate my research tool. Genetic method, we know man's behavior is a product of development, product development scales. We can think human development like a continuous development when each process happens simultaneously but in different time scales. And we establish some criteria for each scale. Microgenesis. Microgenesis for us refers to short events. It's how students understand time concerning to his family, his school, and specific situations lived by him. Sociogenesis. For us, sociogenesis refers to a long event. It refers to how the student understands time concerning to his community, his society. About ontogenesis, we consider that ontogenesis is long events, also long events, is how a person understands time concerning to the history of the societies, how the influence of the societies is how the person understands time concerning to the history of the societies. Okay. And phylogenesis refers to how a person understands time concerning to the history of this human species. I'm going to give you an example. Examples. Microgenesis and ontological dimension. I asked, what is time for you? About sociogenesis and epistemological dimension. I asked, without watches, how people of your society, culture, could measure time? Justify. About ontogenesis and axiological dimension. How time was valued in human civilizations throughout history. And phylogenesis and epistemological dimension. I ask, how can a creature of the human species in a totally dark place notice time? Justify. My specific objectives, I know it's a challenge. I wanted to identify in my answers the presence of different genetic scales. So if I compare students of the first year and the last year, will students of the last year achieve more genetic levels? And I want to establish relations between the notion of learning orders and my answers. Some examples. This student is the third year. Physics graduation has 4 years. I asked, what is time for you? He said, I think time is I don't know, it's something. Yeah, it's something that is an absolute, in my opinion. Relatively, so as Einstein described it, that the time for me, it's not the time to another observer, but it's absolute in a sense, I think. Like space, and the space is absolute, and should be considered absolute to explain some phenomena. The time also, I think. It's something like the ether. I don't know, a very broad field. We know that in this case, the student consider that mechanical Newtonian time like is better than time for Einstein. Time for Newton is better than time for Einstein. This other question, as a human being in a totally dark place, how would a person notice time? Justify. I think we don't need to limit yourself to see, to realize the passage of time. Yeah, if you could realize the passage of time through the changes in the environment. And I said, but you can't see any change. I'm thinking in this situation, then I find it even harder to understand. I think I wouldn't notice time. So for this student, we can see, we need light to see a transformation, to notice time. I think I will give just one more example. Who values time the most in your society and culture? Why? We are inside in a capitalist system, I think. if we like it or not, every citizen ends up having to, we have to work, to earn money, to eat, to wear, to buy, and we have to study. If not, if you will not be hired by the company. I have to produce. If not, I will be fired. We like it or not, the whole society is inserted in the system, even if you don't want it. Even for people in the countryside, because they have to find a way to have an income, you know? So there is no alternative. Time is money. Some remarks. 3 students that attend to relativity course find it hard to get away from Newton's comprehension of time. Only 3 of 9 students were able to relate time to thermodynamics. A student said it's not possible to notice time in a completely dark room. And my next steps is pursue the notion of time in a historical research related to graduation course. I will interview more people and analyze and categorize my data. I intend to point the physics graduation course of the University of São Paulo. The graduation course reinforces a mechanical vision, instead a reflection about time concept, does not favor dialogue in classroom, and obfuscate the complexity and historicity of this concept, and don't discuss different senses of meanings, and which are sometimes contradictory, as the reversible time in mechanics and arrow of time in thermodynamics. And